She walked in like a whisper. No entourage, no designer heels, just a simple grey linen dress and a cloth bag that swung gently against her hip. The grand hall of the Langston estate, with its glittering chandeliers and marble floors, swallowed her whole in seconds. Nobody turned to greet her. Nobody offered a seat. She didn't expect one. The room was already full tailored suits, velvet gowns, champagne glasses in hand. This wasn't just a will reading. This was a war zone of inheritance, where the well-dressed hunted millions like lions circling prey, and when the quiet woman entered, they smelled blood. "Who let housekeeping in?" a sharp voice called out from near the fireplace. All heads turned. A man in a gold tie and a too-expensive blazer smirked like he'd just delivered the punchline of the year. Across the room, a young woman with a tight bun and high-end clutch snapped a photo of the newcomer and whispered, "I swear, if she's here for money, I'll scream. Look at her. That cardigan's got holes." Someone laughed. Another added, "Maybe she's one of Miles' flings. Came to cry her way into a check." The woman said nothing. She just adjusted the strap on her bag and took a spot near the far wall, right next to a stained glass window that glowed with morning light. Her name was Elena Brooks, but they didn't know that. Not yet. To them, she was just in the way. She didn't look like family, didn't act like someone who belonged. She didn't clink glasses, or fake grief, or circle the room fishing for legal scraps like the rest of them. She stood quietly, alone, her eyes scanning the hall not out of nervousness, but observation. But no one noticed that part. All they saw was a woman who didn't fit. And in a place like this, that was unforgivable. "I mean, look at her shoes," said Bridget Langston, niece of the deceased, as she lifted her phone to record a video. "This is literally what you get when you invite the public." "Should someone tell her this isn't open mic night at a soup kitchen?" joked Preston Langston, the so-called favourite nephew. Laughter, applause, even a toast. And Elena? Still silent. Still. That seemed to bother them even more. The noise turned uglier. One woman brushed past Elena and accidentally spilled a few drops of wine on her sleeve. "Oops," she said sweetly. "You might want to get that washed. Oh, wait." More chuckles. Eleanor didn't flinch. And then came the moment. Trevor, one of the Kazinsa man with perfect teeth and nothing behind his eyes, walked right up to her, holding a folded napkin in one hand and a Sharpie in the other. "Since you're here, might as well help out," he grinned. He scribbled something on the napkin. Then, as if it were part of a magic trick, tucked it into the outer pocket of her bag when she wasn't looking. Half the room leaned forward, phones in hand. When Elena turned slightly to shift her weight, the note became visible. Lost and found. Stray woman looking for fortune. Laughter erupted. Photos were taken. Someone uploaded it within seconds. Hashtag number "will reading gone wrong" started trending in their tiny echo chamber of entitlement. And still, she didn't say a word. Elena just stood, her eyes now fixed on the front of the room where a large oak table sat, waiting. The lawyer hadn't arrived yet. The reading hadn't begun. But the war had. And she had already won the first battle. Not with words, not with power, with silence. Because where they saw weakness, she knew her strength. They had no idea that the woman they'd humiliated wasn't just a guest. She was the reason the will reading was happening at all. But they'd learn that soon enough. The lawyer was late. And that gave them more time to play their game. Trevor circled back to his corner of the room, smug as ever, high-fiving Bridget like a frat boy who'd just pulled a prank at homecoming. Someone else pulled up the photo of the napkin, already posted to a group chat titled "Langston Loot League." The comment section filled up fast. Who even is she? Miles must have gone soft in the head before he died. $10 as she walks out crying. But the woman in the cardigan didn't cry. She didn't even blink. Elena stayed exactly where she was, her hand gently resting on the strap of her cloth bag. The sunlight had shifted now, catching the edges of her silhouette. And for a moment, just a breath, the room felt off. Like she was holding something the rest of them couldn't see. A few people started to notice. Not the loud ones, not the ones snapping photos, but the quiet ones near the back, the paralegal who was there to take notes, the older groundskeeper who stood respectfully near the door, even the bartender pouring water in the corner. Their eyes lingered longer than usual on Elena, watching her, not with judgment, but curiosity. Because there was something in the way she stood, not nervous, not defiant. Prepared. At 10:02 a.m., the side doors creaked open. The room straightened itself like a school assembly before a principal walks in. Arthur Winslow, the family's estate attorney for nearly 25 years, entered with his usual unreadable expression and a heavy black briefcase in his hand. His salt and pepper hair and steel grey suit were the only things in the room not trying to scream for attention. He walked straight to the oak table and placed the briefcase down with a soft thud that felt like a drumbeat. No greetings, no small talk, just business. "Good morning," he said flatly, adjusting his glasses. The room murmured back. A few hellos, some awkward nods. Elena said nothing. Arthur clicked open the locks on the briefcase and withdrew a single thick envelope. Its edges were embossed with the Langston family seal-deep red wax, unbroken. He held it up for everyone to see. "This," he said, "is the verified notarized last will and testament of Mr. Miles Langston, executed 3 years ago." The room stiffened. 3 years? Preston whispered to Bridget. "But he only passed 6 months ago." Arthur continued. At Mr. Langston's request, this document was to be held in strict confidence and read only in the presence of the following individuals. He paused, looking out at the crowd. "I count 27 of you." The invitation list was 25. A long silence. Then his eyes rested on Elena. She met his gaze calmly. No apology, no explanation. And Arthur, strangely, gave her a small nod. He knew who she was, but the others didn't. Preston stood suddenly, puffing out his chest like a cartoon rooster. "Excuse me," he said, gesturing toward Elena. "Before we move forward, I'd like to address the elephant in the room." Arthur raised an eyebrow. "Go on." "This woman," Preston declared, "is not family. She's not on the registry. She's not blood. She shouldn't even be in this room." A few people clapped. Bridget grinned. Arthur said nothing. He simply opened the envelope. "Let's allow Mr. Langston to answer that." The seal cracked. The sound was subtle, but in the silence, it felt like thunder. Arthur unfolded the pages, cleared his throat, and began reading. "To those gathered, I appreciate your time. If you're hearing this, I'm gone. And I imagine some of you are already wondering what you're about to get." Nervous laughter. A few guilty glances. "But before you count your millions, I want to tell you a story about a woman I met 10 years ago. She had no interest in my money. She didn't know my name. She helped me in a diner when I was coughing on my own breath, and everyone else just watched. Some brows furrowed. She didn't recognize Menno, the real estate mogul, not the guy on Forbes, just a man who needed help. That moment stuck with me, and I never forgot it." Now the room really shifted. Years later, I ran into her again. Same grace, same patience. Still didn't know who I was. We talked, we laughed. Eventually, I married her. Gasps. Phones lowered. Conversations stopped cold. I kept it private, for her protection, for her peace. She didn't want this circus, but she loved me when I was just a name she didn't know. And now, everything I built, every estate, company, patent, and cent's hers. The room went silent. Then, broke open. "Wait, what? That can't be real. Who even is she?" Arthur looked up slowly, scanning the room. "You all asked," he said quietly. "That's your answer." Then, almost casually, he turned to Elena. "Mrs. Elena Langston," he said, "would you like to say anything?" And for the first time since she entered that room, she moved. She stepped forward, not rushed, not triumphant, just whole. The space around her changed, like it was catching up to who she really was. The napkin still hung from her bag. She pulled it out, looked at it for a moment, then folded it in half and set it gently on the table beside the will. Then she raised her head and smiled. But she didn't say a word. She didn't need to. You could feel the air leave the room. As Elena stood beside the table, the crowd stared as if someone had just torn the curtain off a secret they'd never imagined. Her cardigan, her worn dress, the silence she wore like armor, they weren't signs of weakness. They were strategy. And for the first time, the people who mocked her started realizing they might not be the ones holding the cards. Preston's face contorted as he tried to laugh it off. "This has to be a joke," he said, his voice cracking. "Miles wasn't married. We'd have known." Bridget followed with a sneer. "If she's his wife, where are the wedding photos? The ring? The prenup? She probably met him on Craigslist." Elena tilted her head slightly, still not speaking, still letting them spiral. Arthur Winslow, cool as ever, simply pulled out another folder from the briefcase. He opened it and began placing documents on the table one by one, like a dealer revealing his hand. "Marriage certificate," he said calmly, "dated 7 years ago, signed by both parties. witnessed by Sarah Donovan and Jerome Parks, both still living. Both have provided sworn affidavits. He laid out 2 more sheets. Bank account records joint, held privately by Mr. Langston under a trust shield. Personal letters, notarized. One of which includes the quote, "I love her because she didn't need to know my name to see me." Gasps again. Then came the dagger. Arthur reached into the folder once more and produced a USB drive. He walked over to the projector near the corner of the room, plugged it in, and tapped a button on his laptop. The screen on the far wall flickered to life. A grainy video filled the room. There they were, Miles Langston, laughing on the courthouse steps, dressed simply in a navy suit. Elena beside him in a white sundress, holding a tiny bouquet. They kissed, soft and unhurried, as 2 friends clapped behind them. The date stamp at the bottom corner read exactly what Arthur had said, 7 years ago. The silence that followed was violent. Trevor's smirk evaporated. Bridget's hands trembled as she gripped her phone tighter, like it could shield her from the truth on the screen. Even Clara, who had posted the napkin photo and captioned it, "Gold Digger Crash Alert," slowly sat down, her face pale as salt. This can't be real," Preston muttered again. But no one believed him anymore. Arthur turned to Elena. "Would you like to say something now?" She looked out across the room, not with pride, not with pity, with clarity. "I didn't come here for your money," she said. Her voice was quiet, but it echoed in the marble hall like a verdict. "I came to see who you were." People shifted in their seats. No one looked her in the eyes. "I came to see who would mourn Miles as a man, not as a bank account. Who would treat a stranger with kindness, not contempt. Who would respect a woman who didn't wear a $1,000 dress." She paused. "You all failed." That's when Bridget snapped. "Oh please," she said, standing now. "This whole thing is a setup. You wanted us to look bad. You dressed down on purpose. You baited us." Elena didn't deny it. She didn't have to. Arthur stepped forward again. Actually, that was Miles' idea, and hers, together. He walked to the table and tapped the folder. This reading was orchestrated down to the detail, including the security cameras you didn't notice. He nodded to the red blinking lights tucked into the corners of the ceiling. Every insult, every whisper, every laugh. Then, the twist nobody expected. Elena reached into her bag and pulled out a small remote. Simple, black, just one red button. She pressed it. The projector screen flickered again, this time to a live feed. And there, in real time, sat Miles Langston. Alive. Sitting in a leather chair, clean-shaven, healthy, his grey-flecked hair combed neatly to the side. "Hello," he said softly. Half the room gasped. The other half froze. Bridget dropped her phone. Clara covered her mouth. Trevor took a full step backward. Miles smiled faintly. "You all thought I was dead, or worse, that I had died and left you a checkbook to fight over, but I've been watching, listening, every word, every look." He turned his eyes to the camera. "Elena warned me. She said, if you give them a chance, they'll show you exactly who they are." She was right. Now the twist was complete. Eleanor wasn't just a surprise wife. She was the architect of the entire operation. The setup, the silence, the test. A test they had all failed. Miles's voice deepened. "I loved all of you. I gave some of you jobs. I paid for schools, medical bills, cars, second chances. But the moment you saw someone who didn't look like you, someone you didn't recognize, you tore her down." He paused. Let the silence shame them. "That's not family, that's entitlement." He looked off-screen, nodded. And just like that, the feed cut. The lights dimmed. And every head in that room turned back toward the quiet woman with the cloth bag and the calm gaze. Elena Langston. The only one in the room who didn't need to prove anything. Because everything she needed to say had already been said. And none of it had required shouting. No one spoke. Not a whisper. Not a breath. Even the chandeliers above seemed to hold their light a little differently, as if the whole room had taken a pause to relearn what power looked like. Eleanor stood at the center now, not by force, not by declaration, but by gravity, the kind that only truth carries. Preston tried to recover first. He shot to his feet, his voice louder than it had been all day. "Okay, wait. This isn't fair. You can't just cut everyone off because of some setup. We didn't know who she was." Elena turned to face him, calm as ever. "You didn't need to know," she said. "You just needed to be decent." The words landed harder than any outburst ever could. He opened his mouth again, But Arthur Winslow raised a hand. Mr. Langston left instructions. A final addendum to his will activated only if this scenario unfolded. He tapped on his laptop. Another document appeared on screen. Names. Dozens of them. Bridget squinted. What is this? Arthur didn't blink. A list of individuals permanently removed from Miles Langston's estate. Effective immediately. No shares, no property, no contact. You are legally severed from all business, legacy, and trust ties. He began to read. Preston Langston, Bridget Langston, Trevor Morgan, Clara Vincent. Each name fell like a gavel. Final. Public. People began rising from their seats, some in protest, others in stunned silence. Trevor swore under his breath. Clara, white-knuckled, pulled out her phone only to see her influencer account already suspended. Sponsors were dropping her in real time, comments flooding in. The photo of Elenathe, one she mocked, now re-uploaded with thousands of messages praising the woman's quiet strength. Bridget stormed toward Arthur's desk. This is character assassination. Arthur calmly pushed a security button under the table. 2 guards entered from the back, suits clean, expressions unreadable. They didn't yell. They didn't grab anyone. They just escorted people to the doors. One by one. Please, Preston pleaded, turning to Elena now. Tell him you forgive us. Tell him we're sorry. You're better than this. Prove it. Elena met his eyes, and what he saw wasn't anger. It was disappointment. Forgiveness, she said quietly, is earned with humility. You haven't shown any. Clara reached for her cracked phone. This can't be happening. I was just joking. Elena raised an eyebrow, then laughed now. Clara looked away. As the guards moved the last few out, the room finally began to breathe. The tension broken, the venom gone. Only 6 people remained. Arthur, Elena, and 4 others. A soft voice spoke up from the side of the room. I knew it was you. Eleanor turned. Sarah Donovant, the nurse from the wedding video. Now a little grayer, a little slower, but still the same warm eyes. She stepped forward, took Elena's hand. He talked about you all the time, said you were the only thing in his life that made him feel real. Behind her stood Jerome Parks, the librarian who'd signed their marriage license. He nodded respectfully. It's good to see you again, Mrs. Langston. And finally, the older man who had stood near the door the whole time, the groundskeeper walked forward with a small bottle of water in hand. You dropped this when you came in, he said, offering it to her. Figured you might still need it. Eleanor smiled softly, took the bottle, then looked at the 3 of them. Thank you, she said, for seeing me when no one else did. Miles hadn't returned to the room. He didn't need to. This was Elena's moment, not his. She turned to Arthur. Is there anything else? Arthur shook his head. Just one final instruction. He handed her a smaller envelope, handwritten, the seal already broken. She opened it, scanned the short note inside, and smiled. This building, she said to the few left, will be sold. Proceeds will go toward a foundation, one built in Miles' name but rooted in his real legacy. She looked around the room that had once held wolves in cocktail dresses and silk ties. Dignity, kindness, integrity. She walked slowly toward the door. Not triumphant, just whole. As she passed the long oak table, she paused only one set to pick up the napkin Trevor had slipped into her bag earlier. She looked at it again. Stray woman looking for fortune. She folded it neatly and dropped it in the trash on her way out. Outside, the April sky was a soft blue, the breeze warm. Somewhere in the distance, wind chimes played from a garden window. Elena didn't look back. She didn't need to. She had walked into a room where no one thought she belonged. She had stood alone, silent, while the world mocked her. And she had proven without raising her voice that true power doesn't come from money or status or clothes. It comes from knowing who you are, and refusing to let anyone else decide that for you. Greatness doesn't wear a name tag. It doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't scream to be seen. It simply walks in and lets the truth do the talking. She didn't raise her voice. She raised the standard.